Hi, this is Christian Ray Flores, and you're listening to Awakened Nation with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation. Hey everybody, I am incredibly jazzed to have this gentleman on today, Christian Ray Flores. Welcome to Awakened Nation, Christian.
Brad, thank you so much for having me.
You got it, man. You're gonna love this guy, because he's done it all, man. Wouldn't you say? You're just getting warmed up, right?
That is true. Yeah, it is a very eclectic life that I've led.
I love it. Today's guest is Christian Ray Flores. He is an entrepreneur, international recording artist, philanthropist, and high performance coach. Christian's story, and this is why I wanted you on the show, his story is one of extraordinary transformation and resilience. As a child refugee in Chile, raised in Africa, he became a pop star in Russia with his hit, Our Generation, serving as an anthem in President Boris Yeltsin's campaign against the communists. Today, Christian is a US-based entrepreneur, evangelist, and philanthropist with a master's degree in economics, fluency in 4 languages. Whoa, I'm impressed. You know how Americans, we only speak one. A social following of 60,000 and a weekly newsletter reaching 22,000. He is currently promoting his book, The Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America, in which he shares powerful insights from the perspective of an immigrant who experienced life under tyranny. Welcome to the show, Christian.
It's really good to be here.
Thank you, my friend. So let's go back. How did you become a refugee? Because as you know, a lot of Americans, we don't get true international news. We kind of are in a bubble, and you know that now after living here. With our news
That's
media,
right.
they only tell you what they think you need to hear. So let's begin. How did you become, and why did you become a refugee?
Well, my parents were both Marxist, and my mom's Russian, my dad's Chilean, and they were in Chile. We were going to just live there forever, and Chile elected a socialist president. And interestingly enough, it's not normal, it's not typical for socialist presidents to get elected democratically, but he was actually, right? And what happened then is there was a reversal. He was overthrown very violently, and the regime that took over was a military regime, and they proceeded to basically put tens of thousands of people in concentration camps, secret prisons, a lot of torture, a lot of death, very, very, very violent. And my father ended up in a concentration camp. My mom was, she had 2 little children. I was 5, my sister was 3. And we ended up being in hiding for a while. She literally slept with a gun under her pillow because she was in fear that we would be
Right.
found out and also, suffered. And we were very lucky. So he came out alive and even not, he wasn't even tortured, which was incredibly fortunate. And then we ended up in a refugee facility that was essentially organized by the United Nations to protect expats from the violence. And so my
Right.
dad was sort of the beneficiary of being married to a foreigner. And we ended up spending some time there until we got asylum in Germany, in Munich, Germany. So that's sort of the origin story that sent us traveling and ended up going to 4 different countries by age 7. And then the rest is just almost like a continuation of that trajectory of very eclectic, high contrast life.
Uh, Being in a refugee camp, people don't really realize it can be a little scary because there are nefarious characters who can be there and do different things. I'm sure you remember, even though it's been many, many years, I'm sure you
Mhm.
remember some of the fear your parents went through trying to protect you guys.
Yes, but I say it's a refugee facility because it was not the same thing as like a Syrian refugee camp where there's a bunch of tents, right?
Right.
It was actually in a some sort of Catholic facility that was repurposed. The Catholic Church was very, very protective of the people
Hmm.
that were victims of violence. And so relative to the things that we see, let's say in the Middle East, it was actually much, much better. So we had a bunch of
Oh,
rooms, like every room had maybe two or three families. So it was very crowded, also
right.
very scary. But it was not a lot of people. It was probably a few hundred people maximum. And we had really good care. The, I mean, it's like almost like going to a camp, right, somewhere. So it's not very comfortable, but there's not life-threatening. With maybe the difference that it was everything around us was life-threatening.
Right,
So,
right.
so there were actually guards posted around this facility that basically made it very real. Like if you just step one step out, you could be arrested easily. If they want to
Right.
get you, they'll get you there. If you're inside, you're safe because you're under the umbrella of the United Nations.
That's good. That's good. I just wanted to paint the picture because a lot of Americans, and in other countries as well, may not understand the journey it takes to lose everything and then move
And
forward.
and
You
that
know,
was very real. And that I mean, certainty levels are at zero, right? You literally just lost everything. Your life is over as it was. You can't stay.
right?
You have no idea where you're going, where they're going to let you go, what are you going to do there? Nothing. So that
Hmm.
is that is extraordinarily stressful, and I think that's maybe part of the reason why I have very vivid memories when I was so young, right? No
Right.
pictures, but I definitely have vivid memories.
Good, good. So now you're in Germany. What happened next? You got established, or
We were barely getting established in basically my dad got a job in Lufthansa. The German government was extraordinarily generous with us. They gave us an apartment. The mayor was at the airport meeting us. It was just extraordinary, right? I'm so
wow.
grateful to this day. And then my mom, I think she was just so shell-shocked from the whole experience that she really wanted to go back to Russia. And my dad he's a softie, so he said, okay. And, we went and then, and they were Marxist. Both of them were Marxist. So I feel like they felt going to the mothership would be helpful. I don't think it was because I think the Soviet consul was saying, "Oh, you guys were heroes. You suffered from fascism. Come home," and we will give you a hero's welcome. And we ended up in a communal apartment in this decrepit, apartment building in Moscow, very poor. Was sharing an apartment with another family, essentially, and like even the train ride to the Soviet Union was traumatic because they got him off the train rather, and the KGB interrogated my father for like hours on end before they even let him in. So I think that was a mistake from my perspective, but they're very idealistic people.
Yeah.
So we went back to Russia, spent a little bit of time there until my dad got a contract in Africa, in Mozambique, as an engineer. And that's how we ended up in my fourth country and third continent by age 7.
I just find it funny when people escape communism and then they say you were heroes because you stood up to fascism. It's like, okay, all right,
Yeah, I know. It's hilarious and
it
sad.
is. Yeah, that's amazing. So how did you become a pop star and kind of the face of this new generation? See how I wove that in there.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I see what you did
yeah,
there.
with your song, Our Generation. I mean, how did that happen? Because that's extraordinary to go from what you went through to now being at what we consider the pinnacle of
Yeah.
success in the Western world.
It was so strange, right? Because we're refugees. Now we're living in the Soviet Union. Now we're living in Africa, one of the poorest countries in the world. I mean, we can go into rabbit holes exactly how that felt like. But imagine one of the poorest countries in the world that was taken over by a Marxist government, and all of the supply chain is gone. So there's abundance of local things, but I kid you not. I mean, I had to like take a second, like I had to like call my parents and go, "Do I remember this correctly?" But I don't remember any stores. Like you can't buy
Right.
an appliance, you can't buy a bike, you cannot. there's no stores. There's just sort of markets and maybe some restaurants, actually. I remember there's an ice cream place, but we didn't have any toys. Like we did
Right.
not have toys. We played with
Hmm.
sticks and things that we sort of made with sticks, right? And like
Right.
I remember having a soccer ball for a while until I think it was destroyed. And then I played in my neighborhood with kids. We had a rag and we would put a lot of string around the rag, and that's how we played soccer. So it is just a reality that is so impossible to imagine for somebody in the first world, but that's what it was. And going back to Russia, my parents got divorced. And of course, Africa had also its share of Africa things like civil war, for example, right? We had
Right.
bombings and things like that. And luckily, the civil war didn't arrive at the capital, but we got echoes of it, right?
Mm.
Bombings and things like that. And and my dad, of course, worked nationally. So, I mean, his trucks were blown up and drivers killed on a regular. That was just sort of normal stuff with him. And when we went back to Russia, the Soviet Union, after my parents divorced, again behind the Iron Curtain, it's like the land of mediocrity, right? You
Yeah.
couldn't buy anything Western there. It's all terrible, sucky Eastern stuff, right? Right, local stuff. Mediocrity is the
Right.
name of the game, and um, and I remember because I had a glimpse of the West, right? Traveling, going to neighboring countries in Africa, and we went to Brazil and Chile to see family, things like that. So I would get a glimpse of that world, and then we got a TV set like 3 years in, and we could get these shows, these American shows,
Right.
and in that world there were people that were driving beautiful cars, and they would go on cruises. They would go on cruises, right? They would be
You
dressed
say
well.
free time. Yeah.
I
And
know.
money.
Yeah, it's
And
it's
money.
amazing.
Yeah.
So like to me, it was this almost like I was tuned up to the signal from a parallel universe that I would never be able to see. But I was very, very interested in that. And
Right.
the more I thought about it, the more free my mind got, the more attracted I was to Western values and to entrepreneurship and to freedom and to all those things, right? And so then eventually I'm behind the Iron Curtain, and and just to give you a little bit of a glimpse, in high school, I would be like bored to death, right? During class, I'm sort of ADHD, and I would be doodling like these drawings in my notebook, and I would draw. I liked logos, so I would put like logos of Adidas or Nike, and I liked the logo
Yeah.
for the band Kiss with the double lightning sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
S's and stuff like that, and Michael Jackson. So I would draw, and to me, it was sort of my mind thinking about possibility, prosperity, brands that sort of took over the world. And I would never buy an Adidas thing, maybe in the black market. I would never be in a show for Kiss, for example, right? And but my mind would attach, and of course, I
Yeah.
got then an economics degree, and then I graduate, and the whole thing falls apart. All of
Right.
it, all of it. And then it's free market, right? So my sort of entrepreneurial juices kicked in, and I'm like, this is it. I'm doing something. And I was musical my whole life. So all of my friends went to commerce and trade and banking, and I went to music. Of course, the one idiot that does something that has very low probability of success.
Yeah.
And it's succeeded because I happen to have sort of this very Western music style and flow. I went from a minority, like a dark-skinned kid, like where are you from exactly, to exotic. That's the
Right.
version. That's the version, right?
That
And
that's how you know you've arrived. You know what I
exactly, though I'm
mean?
exotic. First
Yeah.
time when I'm a minority, and I'm dating my girlfriend in high school, and all of her friends go, "Why are you going out with him?" This, like ugly duckling kind of situation. And then yes, now you have long hair. Now you're exotic because you do music. So it's really funny how those things happen just overnight. And I just happened to bring almost like a mix of R&B and pop and hip hop, and I danced because I was a break dancer. All of that sort of was packaged and presented to the world, and apparently there was demand for that because the
Yeah.
wall came down, and that's essentially how it all happened. And just to give you like almost like finishing that little line, that circle of doodling in my notebook, which basically to me represents, look, if you pursue your dreams and you're in an environment where you have freedom to pursue and to risk. amazing things can happen because, I started doing philanthropy as a pop star, and we did this big festivals for orphans in Moscow. And then the person I never thought I would see live, Michael Jackson, came to our event personally.
Wow.
So I'm literally standing with him, just like I'm sort of talking through the camera with you, like, and he
Wow.
came to my event. So and then I go to his
That's
show.
crazy. That's
And
like, wow.
it is insane. Like to me, it
Yeah.
was. I never thought I would even be in a sh see him live, right? I
Right.
would buy pirated cassettes of him, not even real cassettes, So, and then things like that, and then not only do I have Adidas, I have an endorsement deal with Adidas. My picture is in every Adidas store in Moscow, and I have endorsement deal with Guess and with Head and Shoulders, and in multiple
Yeah.
languages in 15 countries. Then I moved to the U.S. and we started the little production company, and I produced a Eastern European rock band in the studio of Kiss and I hired the producer of Kiss to produce this album for me. So I just love those stories because to me they represent, hey, if you have a mindset of possibility,
Right.
put yourself in situations where those possibilities can be realized, right? And you'll be surprised of the things that can happen if you have a certain mindset. And to yours and I connection here with immigrants, right? I think immigrants bring that level of urgency
Yeah.
and drive and boldness to this country, and that's one of the many things that make America fantastic.
It is. And I want our audience to experience a little bit of your work. So we're going to roll the tape.
Check out the mega force beat. Dance, 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 dance. Come on, dance. Let's go, come on. Let's go, come on. Утром проснулся я вдруг, подумав, что не помешало бы мне отдохнуть от трудов, от забот, и сев в машину музон включил я, поехал играть в баскетбол. Может быть футбол, может волейбол. Вечерком с друзьями пошли в ночной клуб, чтобы поплясать от души. Эй, поплясать от души. Там толстый дядя учил, как жить нам, что нам одевать и как тратить наши деньги. Слушай, дядя, не спеши, нам лучше знать, куда идти. Не трогай нас, сами реши, с кем нам дружить, кого любить. Наша энергия движения, мы новое течение, наше поколение. Наше поколение, мы сила притяжения, знак освобождения. We make a force generation, now we're doing our thing. We top the charts, we'll do the bad, but now we'll do it again. We're breaking loose, we're running while we got a power to fight. But only force will make it worse, we better show the last side. Теперь на русский рэп перехожу, рэп перевожу. Мы MF3, мы пришли. И новая тусовка, новая музыка, новый стиль, yeah. И с нами наше поколение. Наши, будем отрываться. Наши, будем отрываться. Наши, будем отрываться. MF3, say 1, 2, 3. Наша энергия движения, мы новое течение, наше поколение. Наше поколение, мы сила притяжения, знак освобождения. MC Paulus in the house. Наша энергия движения, мы новое течение, наше поколение. MC Paulus in the house. Наше поколение, мы сила притяжения, знак освобождения. Let's go, come on. Наша энергия движения.
I love that, this is what we consider the greatest thing in the world in America. And that is you dream it, you create it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that's not how it works in other countries. In Germany to start a business, at least it was 30 years ago, it took you 18 months to really get your license, to make sure that name wasn't used. I mean, it was a long journey. try starting a business anywhere else in the world, and it's very hard. And so, I learned this, my father being an immigrant, first generation born here in America, he didn't raise me like Americans. And you just touched on this completely. And that is, my father had this saying. He says, if you don't like something, change it. You have the power to do it. It's all in your mind to
Hmm.
do that. And I want you to talk about that, because freedom is much more than being able to buy a house. It's being able to create,
Yes,
and
that's
bring
right.
your creative genius to the forefront. This is the one thing you and I have in common. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16, because my dad made it way too hard to ask for a $20 bill. It's easier to start a business. But let's talk about that entrepreneurial journey and the freedom and the love and what comes out of it, I think, is what I want to talk about.
You know, I'm sure you've heard of this saying, and there's all multiple versions floating around. But I do mention it in my book. I think under entrepreneurship, no, under resilience. There's a chapter on anti-fragility there, and it's that weak people create hard times, and
Yes.
hard times create strong people, and strong people create good times. But
Right.
then the good times they create weak people. So
Right.
one of the unfortunate side effects of having prosperity and comfort and no war for so many years in America is that it does seem to create a fragility and a weakness, right?
Yes.
Because you just don't have the suffering that makes strong people.
Right.
So, one of the things that I love doing as a coach, because I'm a high performance coach, I work with all kinds of high performers, right? Is to help people reframe risk and suffering in their minds, right? Because I find that, for a country that, the pursuit of happiness is it's in the very DNA of the culture. There's a surprisingly high number of Americans who don't pursue happiness, they pursue safety,
Yeah.
you know? And they stay in their lane. They don't want to risk it. They avoid suffering at all costs, and that costs them such a quality of life, such an opportunity. That costs them the opportunity to create, just like you said. And the reason for that, I don't blame them. It's that they didn't have that kind of extreme suffering. So I laugh at sort of DEI type rhetoric when they go, white privilege or whatever privilege, right?
Right.
You go, and the logic is so flawed because people go, well, if you grow up, let's say rich or privileged, then you have this ongoing privilege, ongoing
Right.
unfair advantage, and it's so not true. It's actually the opposite of true, right?
Mhm.
I have an unfair advantage over the person who didn't have enough suffering and didn't develop enough grit. I didn't have to sort of engage in creativity, flexibility, assimilation, all of those things. I have the unfair advantage, and in general, America was built on that. It was
Yeah.
built on people who arrive and say, "Oh my gosh, I can do this freely. I can try, right? I have the
Right.
opportunity. I have the opportunities. It doesn't have to be the outcome. The outcomes are different. They all vary depending on, how
Yeah.
you do. But I just find that to be so ironic that that immigrants sometimes can help Americans be more American, for lack of a better word. So I don't know. What was the question again? I think I went on a
No,
complete
just
tangent.
well, just the entrepreneurship in general, what it
Yeah.
teaches you, what you need to do it. But you're
Yeah.
making me laugh because my dad, he set me down when I was like 10, and he looked me in the eye and he goes, I am not your friend. I am your father. And I know I'm rough on you sometimes, but I'm rough on you because I want you to be prepared for the day I leave this earth.
Wow. That's okay. So not a lot of participation prizes in your childhood, I'm assuming.
No. My dad told me he was proud of me once. My dad said he was proud of me once, and I burst out crying. I was 18. I sobbed. He had never
Uh,
said it before. I was doing everything,
yeah.
drumming, all this. Uh, but you said something that being beat up so much emotionally, physically, spiritually, and then being able to stand on your own 2 feet. I have friends today, Christian, that are calling me about problems they're having trouble dealing with that I dealt with when I was 12 years old.
Hmm.
And I'm just going through life. I'm a super happy person. I feel so blessed that God has given me so much. Yeah, I've been through hell and back. I've had, multiple problems in my life, but you know what? I'm alive. I'm 6 feet above ground, as they say.
That's
Um,
right.
I've had a great entrepreneurial life. But let's get back into that. I mean, this is how much of your life is dependent on faith?
You mean spirituality, correct?
Yes, faith, spirituality. Maybe some people lean on the Bible. Some people see God
Yeah.
everywhere. But what is it?
Well, I grew up, this is also an unusual story, right? Because I grew up in a atheist home. Like both my
Right,
parents were atheists. Uh, no one I knew in my immediate circles until my early 20s believed in God. No one, zero.
mm-hmm.
Maybe there was a grandmother somewhere out there, that I didn't pay attention to. But basically that was sort of my environment. It was a complete spiritual vacuum. And
Right,
then in college, I started sort of questioning that and going, I mean, and I met a friend who was into New Age spirituality, so a lot of Eastern stuff. And I went down, I mean, I couldn't get enough of it because I felt
right.
like it was like you're in a desert and they give you some sort of liquid, that is not
Yeah,
sand. So I just soaked it in and I practiced meditation and I studied the Vedas and all kinds of things, right? And what happened is I that really primed me for even the reality that there's a spiritual reality out there, and that there's some there are governing laws of the universe that are not just atheist nothingness, right?
right,
Like everything is random and everything is chaos, which is a really depressing, actually, worldview, and it's also not true. So,
right,
what I found is that New Age, especially because New Age is a very convenient way to explore spirituality because it's like the salad bar of spiritualities, right? You take what you want, you leave what you don't want, you do what you want, you do you, basically, right?
right.
So actually a very American form of spirituality. It's like, hey, you do you, whatever goes. Well, the problem with that is that it doesn't really create a framework that shapes you. It just doesn't. It's like an
Right.
open field of whatever. So it doesn't shape you, and if it doesn't shape you, it doesn't give you how the world actually works.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is I was so unaware and so unprepared for how the world actually works on a deeper level than just basic mechanics,
Right.
that I was at the top of my career. I had a number one hit, literally, like millions of albums, millions in audience in media, and then tens of thousands live. And I didn't know the most basic things about business and money and relationships and romance, and especially romance. That was sort of my weakest, like my lowest score with romance because I come from three generations of broken homes. My parents got divorced. I was deeply traumatized by just heartbroken over that,
Right.
because we had such a great life and then it was gone, right, as a
Right.
family. So I would undermine every relationship I had. And then on top of that, there's this very disoriented layer of being a heartthrob for teenage, girls everywhere, posters on their walls, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so I would, I just didn't even know what to do with that. So I had a series of very shallow dating relationships that were mostly geared for, hey, do I look good with this girl on a magazine cover? That was the level of depth that I had at the
Right.
moment, right? I was just such a shallow person because my ego was just blown up. I mean, of course, you're in your 20s, your ego's already sort
Yeah.
of, disoriented. But imagine that 10x, right? And but what I would do is I would hurt people and I would hurt myself. I guess I just didn't know what to do. So the minute the relationship got serious, I would undermine it and drive the other person away and act out or cheat or do something. I was so cowardly that I wouldn't even break up. I would make them break up with me. That was sort of
Yeah.
the approach that I had. It was just shameful behavior. And then one of the girls that I was dating, she got pregnant, we had a baby, And then she left because I did the thing that I do. And now I'm disconnected from my daughter. She cut me off from my daughter. And I realized it was sort of the almost like the sky fell. That's how it felt.
Right.
It felt like I don't know how to live. It was this almost like an emotional bankruptcy in the under the surface of an external success story. So I was clinically depressed, just depressed. I could just barely function. And somebody invited me to a church, and it was an evangelical church. And I met this guy who was a Canadian missionary who had this sort of, he was third generation Christian or fourth generation Christian, something like that. But he has this generational wisdom about him. And I could feel it, right? I could feel he's just a different, made from a different cloth type
Right.
person. And I was having dinner at his house, and he has this family around him, his little daughter, Britain, his wife, his little apartment in Moscow. And it was like, it was literally a supernatural experience because I turned to him and I'm like, how do I get what you have? Like, it
Yeah.
was that direct. And he
Hmm.
said, I'll teach you from the Bible. And I said, okay. And I was very critical, very arrogant about the whole Bible thing. But I was
Hmm.
so desperate that I clinged to every word he said. 2.5 weeks later, approximately, I became a Christian, literally cut off all of the stuff, all of the life, so to say, right?
Yeah.
That was unbiblical. And that was it. And no one believed me. No one in my crew, because I had a reputation, right? No one in my crew, no one in the press, even some members of the church, they were like, "Hey man, can I say something? Can I confess?" I was like, "I thought you're not gonna make it past like 3 months." They just didn't believe that it was a real thing,
Wow.
right? And then like 2 years later, I start preaching the gospel. I basically said, "Hey, I want to use my talents to have an internal impact. And if I'm able to do this on stage, I'm sure I'll be able to preach the gospel." And I started ministering as well, and I led churches all over, basically. So that was the
Wow.
the turning point.
I guess they didn't read anything into your name that it wouldn't stick, right?
That's
'Cause-
well, the other story about that is that that's actually not my real name.
really?
I had a branding problem because my name is half Russian, half Chilean, half Spanish. It was Ruslan Humberto Flores. So it's just a mouthful, and for a Russian audience, they couldn't really remember.
Yeah.
So I changed it, but I changed it to Christian Ray Flores without being a Christian. And then
Mm.
I think it's like what, 2 years later, I become a Christian. So interesting, huh?
Yeah, I find that very interesting. Yeah, I avoided using my last name for many, many years when I was doing voiceovers. And then eventually, I started a business that went public and everything. And I just said, yeah, this is who I am.
Yeah,
In a
you have
nation
a
of
cool name.
immigrants. Yeah, thanks.
You have a
Uh,
great name.
but I'm looking at your name too. Christian is
Hmm.
obviously Christ. And then Ray is either king or sun rays. And
Yeah.
then Flores, is that flower? Does that mean
Yeah, it's
flower?
Flores. Yeah, they're flowers basically.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
flowers from the sun,
hmm
from the
yeah,
Christian
it
God
was sort
sun.
of it was sort of a positive name. But
Yeah.
at the time, it just phonetically it sounded okay for me, and I could pronounce it as a Russian, and that was it. That was like the depth of my research.
Well, Christ, obviously saved your soul, saved your life, and
Yeah.
I admire everything you're doing. Now, you're not only performance coach, you're doing philanthropy
Yeah.
and I got to think of the word. Are you a preacher or something? Hold on, I forget what you said.
Evangelist, you mean? Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Evangelist.
Yeah,
There we go.
evangelist. Yeah, yeah.
I'm having
So,
a senior moment today. You're an evangelist. So,
yeah, I've been bivocationally ministering and pastoring for literally 27 years. Yeah.
that's
It
fantastic.
never left, basically.
Yeah.
And basically, my logic is, look, if I can do this on stage, if I can, if I have the gift of communicating something, telling a story, in marketing, for example, I have a marketing company as well, and how can I not use it
Right.
to tell the story?
Yeah.
That is the story.
Yeah.
I have to, So for better or
I
for
agree.
worse, that's sort of the trade-off that I've made, that I've sort of fragmented my life a little bit, my attention. And it actually costs you, money, revenue, opportunities if you're focused on more than one thing. But so and admittedly I've done a bit too much of that, so I'm trying to like narrow down my focus a little bit. But I would say, yeah, but it was, I was just trying to serve God.
I love that. That's one of the reasons I do this show. That's one of the reasons I've done anything in my life,
Hmm.
to make the world a better place, to serve God. That's the big secret I didn't tell people for a long time. My love for God was greater than anything
Hmm.
else. So we have a lot in
Yeah.
common. I want to talk about your little book of big reasons to love America. And I love that in the title of the book. What are some of the big reasons to love America?
So the origin story of the book was that I have this sort of very strange, eclectic sort of backdrop to compare America to, both geographically, ideologically, life experience, the experiencing tyranny in three different places. And then also from a standpoint of an economist, right? I just know
Yeah.
how economics work. So it's sort of this very eclectic view on America, and I kept sharing those things to my friends and my wife, especially my wife Deb, and I would just say, look at this. This is amazing, and this and that is amazing, and tell you why this is amazing, and that's not normal. So eventually, she's the one. She's my muse. She sort of gets at a certain point, she goes, "You need to write that as a book." And I've learned I've ignored her advice sometimes, and when I listen to her, usually things go better for me. So eventually, I said, "Okay, Deb, I'm sort of stretched thin, but how about we do it and this is the way?" Because I didn't have the time even. So I was like, "Okay, maybe if I write a book that you can read in like 3.5 hours, like in an evening, I think I can do that." And basically, that was sort of the genesis of the story. And I wanted to do almost like this 10 chapters, 10 reasons, very easy to
Right.
read, and illustrations that are both easy to absorb and understand, and maybe even entertaining at sometimes, but also with enough substance where people would go, "Oh, this is very real. This is actually
Yeah.
helpful to me." So that's
Right.
basically how I built it. So it's very eclectic. I'm sort of eclectic. The book's eclectic, but it's 10 reasons. And I usually sort of mix my observations of America from the outside looking in as an immigrant with some stories from real life stories that to illustrate. I also have these QR codes in every chapter, so you can literally go to another page and it has videos where I tell more stories about that one thing. And there's images. It's a mix of personal archives, pictures, and AI generated illustrations. So it's very immersive, multidimensional. And the general idea is that I want people to see that this country, it's not that there's one thing or two things that are the thing, but it's a combination of things that came together, and it can't possibly be chance, okay? Like it
Right.
can't things like that don't happen at the same time in this particular proportion, in the same place, at this historic time. And so between entrepreneurship and freedom and the
Hmm.
pursuit of happiness and sort of a generous philanthropic spirit and this resilience, this embracing of failure that is normalized in culture here, but it's sort of it's dishonorable to fail in so many other countries. To sort of top down versus network systems of governance, all of those things together happening in history at the same time created a place that is just absolutely extraordinary. And as a coach, I focus on what makes you be at the very top of your game for as long as possible and as happy as possible. That's basically what I do. That's high
Right.
performance, right? And because I care about people so much, I also care about the environments that allow people to flourish. And to me, America is one of those environments. And people are different. You can prefer to live here or there depending on what your preferences and priorities are. But to me, this is the place. I
It
want to live
is.
here. This is the best place for me. I'm more American culturally than I'm anything else, basically.
Right.
So,
I always say this to people. A lot of times we have that spark in us
yeah,
no matter where we're at. I grew up in a small town and I loved my small town experience, but my heart and the way I acted brought me to New York City. And so I was living in New York. Now I'm in Vegas. I'm winding down my life a little bit more as far as the outer,
yeah,
where I want to live, where I want to retire. But that spark is already in us. We're born here. We come from heaven, boom, and then we go into this body and we're with these parents and we have these experiences, and suddenly we realize, we need more because we've been built to embrace more. And the big difference I see from most people and what you and I have in common is we have this creative force in us that cannot be tamed. It has to come out. And if there's anything that God has truly gifted us, I would say it's our ability to take our creative imagination and actually create that reality for ourselves. So
That's
I'm
exactly it.
s-
Yeah,
I'm
that's
so
exactly it.
honored to have you on your show on the show today. I'm also admiring the fact that you've been with your wife, what, 22 years now?
25.
Oh, yes. Well, your
Yeah.
video on I watched
Hmm. Oh,
you
yeah, yeah.
you
That
wrote a
was a little
song
bit
for
older.
her.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I thought it was just so sweet. But how do we get a hold of you? Where do we go? What's your website and your email if you want to share that?
Well, it depending on what kind of connection do you want, right? So I think the best first step is you go to my newsletter, my Substack. The URL is christianrayflores.com. It's just my name.
Hmm.
And I love that because this is sort of my primary place where I just express value to people, the things that I've learned, things that it's a combination of the my podcast where I'm going on other people's podcasts, even yours. I'll probably put a link in there as well, and I just push it out. I think I have
Yeah.
19,000 people now, subscribers, and the if you're a subscriber, you get a free post and a post exclusively for paid subscribers because we want to
Hmm.
show you extra love for
Right.
supporting our team. And I do basically 2 posts a week, every Wednesday, every Sunday. That's basically it.
Hmm.
So that's one place. If you're interested in the podcast, you can just look up Headspace by Christian Ray Flores everywhere, Spotify, YouTube.
Got it.
If you're interested in coaching, go to Exponential without the E, exponential.life. And that's basically where my coaching stuff lives,
Right.
and I would love for you to buy a book, get a few copies for your friends because
Sure.
I think a book it is the best investment you can do because for $15 you get somebody else's life
Yeah,
experience, you know. So
I agree.
and you can just look that up on Amazon, just put my name in there and you'll find it.
Awesome. We're going to put all those links in the show notes. Thank you, Christian Ray Flores, for being on Awakened Nation, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you. It's an honor, truly.
Good, good. Well, we're not going to let you go that easily. I have my lightning round. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes, I am. Let's go for it.
Good, good. Uh, I want to ask what that je ne sais quoi is of the immigrants and your story of watching, American Western television shows. I don't know if you know this, but in India, they had a whole generation of women, young women, leaving the house to go into the cities to have their own lives, their own apartments. And you know what the number one TV show that influenced that was?
No.
Sex and the City.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a huge influence. And then the second top TV show in India for quite a while was Doogie Howser. I don't know if you know that one,
No,
but
I don't.
it's basically Neil Patrick Harris played a boy genius. He went to Harvard Medical School at 16. So
Okay.
it was a balance between how can you be a doctor and also be a kid at the same
That's
time.
right.
So,
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
his buddy Vinny would always come over and drag him to have fun.
Uh-huh.
These influences of the Western, we like to call it capitalism, but it's the freedom of the individual to create the world they want. What do you think it is that sets immigrants apart from regular Americans whose families have been here two, three generations? Uh, what do you think that is, that secret sauce that makes immigrants have this drive to start a business?
Okay, so I can give you like almost like a visual for this. Imagine if you're, you know, when people train with weights,
Yes.
like they jog and they have weights around their ankles, for example, or hands. Why do they do that?
Hmm.
It's because you have this additional stress that trains your muscles, you overcome. But then when you take them off, you're flying, right? I
Right.
think that's the effect. The effect is you cannot believe, you go from, behind the Iron Curtain where entrepreneurship is literally illegal. It's illegal. And we still do it, actually, at risk. So I would have this loophole because I had a double citizenship, Chilean, Soviet. I
Right.
eventually gave up my Soviet citizenship to not go to Afghanistan and kill Afghanis. And we would go to Berlin And then my mom couldn't cross over, but I could cross over. And we would get tape recorders and VHS sort of recorders and like the early computers, and would bring them back and then would take them back to Russia and sell them in the black market. So I would still do it, but there were so many constraints. It was so dangerous. It was, you know, but the spirit is there, right? And it's burning because, I want to create a future that I want. So of course, you come to the States and you see absolute freedom and the
Yeah.
environment supports it and people dream about this stuff. People in sort of bureaucratic, highly centralized countries, they dream of being a government bureaucrat, the average kid, like high percentages of. Here, the average kid will go, I'm going to create a product or an app or a book, and I'm going to be rich and wealthy, and I'm going to influence the world, or I'm going to build a charity. I'm going to I'm going to help a lot of people. That's the spirit. So when you come from the world of restraint and weights around your ankles, and you come to a
Right.
place and the weights are off, you fly. And I think that's sort of the probably a good comparison.
I love that. I love that you said that. My second question is, what would you say to Donald Trump nowadays about, we have this immigrant
Hmm.
situation, who's right, who's wrong. We're trying to get out of
Hmm.
America the criminal element. And
Yeah,
I believe people are conflating that with, oh, we're just being mean to human beings who are
that's right.
refugees.
Yeah. Hmm.
What would you say to him as an immigrant who just loves America?
Well, I was the recipient of somebody else's, welcome in Germany. So I got off the plane. The mayor was there to meet us. So I would say that the out here, and and I'm saying this as an immigrant, right, who loves America. That you have no country if you have no border. That's one. That's just a basic like baseline.
Right.
It's just common sense. It's not heartless or or hurtful or anything. It's just true.
It is.
Second, if you're the president of a country, your primary responsibility is towards citizens of that country. Your heart
Yeah.
can go out to many people all over the world. I live in America. I'm an American, and I have an after-school academy in Mozambique. I still care for the poor. I serve the poor. But if my job is to the American people, my job is to the American people, basically, right?
Right.
And actually, beyond that, people just forget that America is the one of the most generous countries in the world internationally, both through individuals who do extraordinary work for millions of people, and even as a government.
Right.
One of the things that I worked on, I think you mentioned it somewhere. I did this national project when I moved to the States. I was a national director for it's called Positive Choice, and it was a grant, by the federal government for local needs. But at the same year, they had the PEPFAR grant, which was international, and it was basically combating HIV/AIDS internationally. And the
Right.
PEPFAR project, it's millions and millions of dollars, were directed towards completely different people in the third world, especially in Africa, and it saved millions of lives, millions of lives. So
Wow.
it's not mutually exclusive. So if you're a country, you need to have borders. If you're a president, you need to take care of your people. And when it comes to, okay, then how does that square, uh, how does that combine with okay, America is an immigrant nation. Okay, let's take it back then. Who were the people? What are the conditions of the people that came in the golden days that we sort of reflect on and say, okay, this was when America was shaped by immigrants and it attracted immigrants. Of course, you want to attract immigrants. Is that there was not the welfare state.
Right.
So if you came off the boat and you're an Irish immigrant, you were not entitled to anything by the
Right.
state, meaning you also weren't entitled for somebody else's taxes to go to benefit you.
Right.
It was a very different setup. Look, if
Very
you,
different.
oh, yeah, so you see, and this is an extreme example, but just to make a point, like there was a story that I saw. I think it was, it was a legitimate source of news that of Arab family. The guy had several wives that moved to Germany as an exile, and because he had several wives, it's like they figured out how to set up the thing. That family was making $500,000 of the state, of the welfare state,
Wow.
doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's not a
Wow.
setup for productivity, for enriching the country that you came into. It really isn't, right?
No.
If you come in, you get off the boat, You get your butt out to work, to
Right.
contribute and pay taxes and create jobs and create value in other people's lives. So if the setup is that you come off the boat and you have incentives to not work and not contribute, that is not a good setup. And it's actually not compassionate. It's actually will prevent that family from generating the American spirit, and
Yeah.
especially the children, right? Welfare state stuff, right? So
Yep.
that's another thing. Another big observation I think is that, look, if you're looking out for your economy, your people, and you're the president, absolutely grant visas to highly skilled workers. Absolutely.
Right.
Those are
Right.
the people that basically come here to contribute. Let them come here to make it easy for them because they will enrich us with their intellectual property, their hard work, their immigrant spirit, all of those things. So you can have a little bit of both. And it doesn't mean that you don't let a few 100,000 people in every year. This is a massive country that are seeking asylum legitimately. But it has to be a process, and it doesn't have to you can't cost the average American something,
Right.
significantly in a significant way. It just doesn't make any sense. You've seen those experiments in other places in the first world, in the West, and they always backfire. That's basically
Yeah.
my quick analysis.
I love what you said because you're correct on every level. The last administration here basically was enacting what we call the Cloward Piven strategy, which was to overwhelm our social services with immigrants in order to economically collapse America. And you've lived through when a collapse happens
Yes.
twice in your
Yeah.
life,
Hmm.
and it's not pretty. And people have this glorified image of communism that somehow the government's going to be good guys and they're going to take care of everybody and we're all going to have jobs. And
Yeah.
that is never, ever been the case.
No, that's
It's
just not true.
the very rich, the political rich, the owners of the companies, and then the poor. There's no in between. So yeah, as Donald Trump would say, "I love your message. It's the greatest message ever."
I hope so. I don't
They
know.
shot me.
You
They
know.
shot me, Ray. Christian Ray, you're the greatest. I'm gonna put you in my cabinet. I'm gonna put you in my cabinet, and you're gonna run the immigrants section of our government. So, thank you.
That's a good impression. That was very good,
Thank
man.
you. Thank you. I had Dinesh D'Souza on last month, and
Uh-huh.
he blessed me with the interviews he did with Trump. So
Oh, that's
I feel
fantastic.
incredibly blessed.
I like Dinesh. He's awesome.
He's very good. My last and final question is: with everything you've done, with
Yeah.
everything you've gone through, what is your favorite memory?
Oh, wow. That is okay. That's a massive question.
I know it's my favorite. I ask every guest it.
Oh my gosh, I can't even I have to really think about it. Okay. I'm just gonna pick a random because there's so many, right? I
Yeah.
really do have just so many. I would say this, and I think the context of this is because it was living in places of just insane scarcity and danger and oppression oftentimes, and then believing something can be created and believing that people will respond, and then experiencing that as a on a large scale. So, and I would basically, well, I'll pick from the hat of many, many heavy memories, would be the first time I played a set of three songs in a sports arena. Uh, and before that, I was doing just small clubs and things like that. And it's just you just do something so irrational, like try to pursue a music career, and you write songs and they suck. Okay, the first ones, and you rehearse and
Yeah.
I found dancers. They were break dancers. They were not real dancers. They were street dancers. They can't coordinate so I had to train them and I choreographed the things and I wrote the songs and I worked my producer, and the songs became better. And I imagined it a million times in my mind. And then I'm standing, you know, behind sort of the main stage, and there's 10,000 people and it's televised to millions. And I have the musicians ready, dancers ready, my rappers ready, all of those people, and I'm about to go. And all of them, all of my crew, and they were amazing because we worked for months and months and months tirelessly to just present a show that was extraordinary that stood out. They were all losing their minds. They were just so scared. And I was not. I was like, this is it. This is it. This is destiny. That's sort of what was my thought, right? And I
Right.
came out there and I just crushed it. And I just knew I just crushed it. And I could, and the lights and the music and the roar of the crowd, and knowing that you are able to create something out of nothing
Yeah.
that will impact maybe millions of people. Maybe so I'll point that one experience out as probably one of my favorite, but I've had
Yeah.
many.
And I imagine, having your song chosen as the anthem for a new generation in Russia,
Yeah.
that's got to have given you goosebumps.
Yeah. Yeah. It was surreal. It really was.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Christian Ray Flores, please reach out to him. Your website again, it's an X, not the E.
Hmm.
What is your website?
Exponential.life.
Exponential.life.
Hmm.
Philanthropist, entrepreneur, coach. You also have a production company. My friend, have been honored to have you on the show today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Truly, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to share those stories and insights.
Good, good. Hey, everybody, don't forget to tune in next week. We're going to have another extraordinary guest here on Awakened Nation. Until then, bye-bye for now. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share this episode out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success is because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.